Well, good morning from Tokyo. In this video, we're going to cover two things. First of all, I'm going to talk about things that I used to do when I started photography that I no longer do today, many years later. And the second thing is take some photos around Tokyo using the X-H2S and the 33mm f1.4. I also need a haircut, but trying to find someone that speaks English is tricky. We're starting this day in Ginza, and Ginza is full of these reflective surfaces, mirrors, all sorts of stuff. And for photography, especially for abstract photography, it's really cool. You can get some really cool shots. There was a guy walking through there. I managed to get him just walking through on that zebra crossing. This is my assistant.
No.
I pay her £5 an hour.
I don't know you.
Her bonus is 20p this week. Her favourite place in Tokyo is the Love Hotel. The first thing that I no longer do is shoot everything wide open. I remember when I first started photography, it was a Canon 50mm f1.8. I'm pretty sure I super glued that lens to f1.8 because at the time I thought, well, I've paid for 1.8, I'm going to use it at f1.8. Not only that, but I also thought at the time that having an out of focus background is a core part of a good image. Of course, we now know that's not the case. These days I mostly shoot between f2 and f8, depending on the available light and also depending on what I actually want the image to look like. Sometimes having some out of focus elements is extremely helpful, whereas at other times having everything in focus can convey the story and the meaning of the image a lot more. I'll still shoot wide open, don't get me wrong, but it'll be an intentional decision. It wouldn't be just because the lens is f1.4 or f1 or whatever. I really like how the back of this motorbike is just poking out, catching in the light, how the number plate's dented a little bit, and just the general colour around it. I know it's a pretty basic scene, but I really like it. The second thing that I no longer do today that I used to do quite a lot when I started is shoot exclusively in manual exposure. I remember when I first started photography, I was watching a bunch of YouTube videos, and the general consensus was that in order for you to be a good photographer, professional photographer, you must shoot in manual. And that's what I thought, so I started shooting in manual. I had no idea what I was doing. I was fumbling around, missing shots, and to me, if I got the technical settings right, in my head at least, I was like, okay, I'm becoming a better photographer because I'm shooting in manual and I'm getting all my settings right. I would argue that being able to find good light, create good compositions, and generally be observant to the environment, the subjects, and everything around you will result in better photos than just being able to perfectly dial in your camera. Here's a quick analogy for you. Knowing how to drive a car with a manual gearbox does not automatically make you a better driver. Knowing how to shift gears yourself does not mean you would know what to do if the back of the car steps out on an icy road. However, once you understand the basic skills of how to control a car, knowing how to use a manual gearbox will let you get the most out of the car and have the most fun while driving as well. The same logic applies to photography. Knowing how to set your camera up manually will not necessarily make you a better photographer. It will not make you see good light or compose well, etc. However, once you understand those basics, then knowing how to use manual fully will definitely help. So my advice is to start with aperture priority or even in auto if you're still not sure about that, and just focus on lighting, composition, and actually seeing a good shot. next thing that I no longer do is heavily underexpose my photos when there's no real need for it. So, of course, if you're shooting at night, underexposing does help. But when I started, I was underexposing all the time, because I remember seeing some YouTube videos about it saying how you must protect your highlights at all costs. The problem is though, when you don't need to underexpose and you underexpose because you want to make sure the sun's not blown out, you end up with a very muddy photo. And a lot of my photos were very muddy because I was lifting the shadows and the blacks so much that all the contrast was just disappearing, and the end result wasn't very nice. These days I generally try to keep my exposure somewhere in the middle. Sometimes I'll go plus or minus 0.3, or in extreme cases 0.6, but at the end of the day, if the sky is really bright and the sun is really bright, I'm not too concerned about overexposing it, because in Lightroom I can just play with the tone curve, reduce the clarity a bit, add a bit of warmth to the blown out highlights, and that masks them quite well. I really like this scene here, where you've got this security guard standing right in a pocket of light, and then the other pocket of light's adding as a leading line. Overall, very cliche, but I think it's pretty cool. When I first started, I was shooting everything pretty much from either eye level or chest level. I didn't think of moving the camera further down, further up, or even trying to get it in between something and shoot through something, get some foreground interest going, get some out of focus elements, and really work the scene. It was very much like, okay, it's a nice scene, take a picture, move on. Now, don't get me wrong, I still do that to this day. However, if I do that today, it's a conscious decision. It's not just autopilot. And I do try my best to at least see if I can get a different perspective. This place is hell on earth. The next thing that I no longer do is go out with 20 different lenses and a ton of gear. These days I try and keep it as simple as possible. Like today I just have one prime on the camera and that's about it. Now sometimes, especially if I'm traveling and I don't know what to expect, I might bring 3 different primes, a wide, a medium and a tight, or a zoom lens. However, for most scenarios I try to keep it down to 1 to 2 lenses or primes at most. When I was younger and I just started out, I would literally pack out my backpack. I'll have 5 lenses at times. I remember, 5 lenses. I'll have my iPad just in case, I'll have a tripod, and I'll have a ton of gear. And in the end, it was a 12-kilogram bag, and most of my efforts were spent on figuring out which lens to use and not actually focusing on photography. Alright, it's a little bit loud here, so I hope you can hear me. I found this scene where you have the train tracks up there, long road, leading lines, and you have a zebra crossing right there with the sun flooding it. What I'm trying to do is get a shot of someone crossing the road with me standing in the middle, but obviously timing it with the cars and the millions of people is a little bit tricky. I will definitely come back here with a longer lens, because I think with some compression you can also get the trains which are over there that you can't see on the camera right now. But I'll see what I can do at 50mm and hopefully can get something. Another thing I no longer do is make extensive plans for my photography. Previously I would open up photo pills, I would find the best light, I'd find the best angle, the best location, and I would meticulously plan every single shot. Now don't get me wrong, this has a lot of merit, and that's how a lot of, especially landscape or astrophotographers, go about their business, and I think in that regard it does make sense. However, even though it's practical, in my opinion, it just sucks the fun out of photography. I love the idea that I have no idea what I'm gonna walk into today. I have no idea if I'm gonna get good light, bad light, and for me that's a huge fun part of photography. If everything was meticulously planned, if I knew what I would get, I don't think I'll enjoy it as much. So yeah, I'm keeping it more fun by not planning. But of course, if it's a client shoot and they're expecting an amazing sunrise, then planning does help. But I think most of us do it for fun, not for clients. So I'd say let yourself be surprised and just go out and shoot. Moving on, thankfully I've never done too much of this when I was younger, but that is blindly following trends. So going back to circa 2018, it was very trendy on Instagram to take a photo of, let's say, a London landmark, put it on a slow shutter speed and then get the trails of cars going past, then color grade it blue, and that was the particular look. It was very popular on Instagram. I'm sure I've tried it once or twice, and everyone was doing it. The issue though is you can take part in a trend, but when that trend becomes your identity and your style, that's when it can become problematic, because there were a few creators that I followed back then who made their entire style, their entire portfolio be based on this trend. So naturally when the trend, let's say, ran its course and it wasn't no longer a thing, their accounts went dormant because they were not getting the likes anymore. No one was subscribing. So my advice is don't follow trends blindly and make sure you still have your own voice within photography. Again, take part in trends by all means. Just don't make a brief trend be your entire identity, your entire photography portfolio, because that will bite you later down the line. Alright, we're nearly finished now. The next thing that I no longer do that I used to do is compare myself to other photographers, especially online. It's very easy to compare because everyone's doing the same thing, and it's one of those things where it looks easy, it looks like everyone else is living this life and doing this cool stuff, but in reality it's all just social media is just, including my own page, it's just polished highlights of the best moments of your life, of your photography, of everything. So if you're comparing your everyday to someone's highlight reel, of course it's always going to look shit. So I no longer compare my photography and what I'm up to with everyone else, because it's just pointless. You know, there's always going to be someone who's doing better than you, has more money than you, who's more successful than you, travels more, has a better camera, does cool things. It's never ending. So compare your photography to where it was maybe a year ago, and that is by far the best metric to progress and to improve, and not to get all down and out about where you are today. Alright, well that is all for today's video. I hope you found it useful, and I hope anything that I've shared has resonated with you. If you've been through any of this, if you've changed how you've approached photography over the years, please share your I can't speak, it's late. Please share your experiences down below. But that's it. Thank you again, and I'll speak to you soon in the next video. Try not to get run over. Hopefully I don't. I'm gonna go to 7-Eleven now and get a smoothie.